Imagine preparing your favorite meal in your kitchen, only to discover that the ingredients have a mind of their own. Picture this: a cozy, homely kitchen, the heart of a quaint little house. The smell of freshly baked bread wafts through the air, mingling with the aroma of simmering tomato sauce. Our protagonist, a culinary enthusiast, is in the midst of preparing a hearty dinner. The chopping board is laden with an array of colourful vegetables, and the stove stands ready, a pot of boiling water atop it. But as the evening wears on, the comforting familiarity of this scene begins to unravel. The knife, once stationary on the counter, begins to twitch, then move, seemingly of its own volition. It dances across the cutting board, slicing through the vegetables in perfect precision. The protagonist watches in astonishment, their heart pounding like a drum in their chest. They reach out tentatively, their hands shaking, and the knife halts, lying innocently as though it had never moved at all. Then there's the stove, a once trusted companion in many a culinary adventure. It starts to play a strange, unpredictable game. The flames beneath the pot flicker, then surge, then die down to barely a simmer, all without any human intervention. The temperature knobs turn with a mind of their own, as if manipulated by an unseen hand. The vegetables, once lifeless on the chopping board, now seem to have a life of their own. They move, they slide, they rearrange themselves. The diced onions align themselves in a perfect row, the chopped tomatoes form a sinister smile. The protagonist, paralyzed by fear, watches as their once familiar kitchen turns into a stage for the bizarre. The once comforting clatter of pots and pans, the sizzle of food on the stove, these sounds now echo ominously around the room, each clink and hiss a grim reminder of the uncanny spectacle unfolding. And that was just the beginning. The kitchen was about to reveal its true nature. The recipe book, a harmless collection of family traditions, suddenly turned into a cryptic guide to fear. In the heart of the kitchen, where joy and comfort usually flourished, an eerie stillness hung in the air. The worn, leather-bound recipe book, a treasured heirloom passed down from generation to generation, suddenly took on a life of its own. Without a breath of wind or a human hand near, the pages of the book began to flutter, as if guided by an unseen force. They danced in a chaotic rhythm, flipping back and forth, until finally settling on a recipe unheard of before: the haunting stew. As the protagonist leaned in to decipher the recipe, a shiver ran down their spine. The ingredients were not just unusual, they were downright chilling. A whisper of dread, a pinch of despair, a dash of torment, and a handful of shadows. The list went on. As they continued to read, the recipe instructions twisted into cryptic messages, each more unnerving than the last. Simmer on a moonless night. Stir with a bone of regret. Serve on a plate of sorrow. The recipe seemed less about cooking and more about invoking a sense of dread. The footnotes took a darker turn, filled with warnings that were better suited for a cursed tomb than a family cookbook. Beware the cook who stirs the pot. Fear the guest who tastes the stew. Mourn the meal that satiates not hunger, but despair. With each word, the protagonist felt a growing sense of unease. The kitchen, once a sanctuary of warmth, now felt cold and hostile. The scent of fear crept into every corner, replacing the familiar aroma of baked bread and simmering soup. There was a sinister energy pulsating through the room, emanating from the book itself. As the protagonist touched the pages, they felt a bone-chilling cold, a cold that seemed to seep into their very soul. With each flipped page, the terror escalated and the kitchen grew colder. The recipe book, once a source of comforting family traditions, had become a haunting tale of fear and foreboding. As our protagonist stood frozen in fear, an eerie figure materialized in front of the stove. It was a spectral entity, translucent and shimmering, with a chef's hat perched atop its formless head. The ghostly gastronomer had made his entrance. This ethereal chef was rumored to be the previous owner of the house, a masterful cook who had met a mysterious end within these very walls. His spirit, it was reported, remained tethered to the kitchen, forever cooking up his last unfinished recipe. Tonight, our protagonist had unwittingly become his captive audience. The apparition began his spectral soiree, preparing what was ominously known as the haunting stew. His ghostly hands moved with an uncanny precision, chopping invisible ingredients with an unseen knife. The air grew colder with each stroke, the lights flickered, and an otherworldly aroma filled the room. It was a chilling sight, a haunting dance between the living and the dead, the tangible and the intangible. With every step the ghostly gastronomer took in his preparation, the paranormal activities in the kitchen escalated. The faucet turned on by itself, spewing icy water. The oven roared to life, bursting with a hellish heat. Pots and pans rattled on their hooks, creating a cacophony of metallic terror. And the refrigerator door creaked open, casting a ghastly light into the room. Yet our protagonist remained rooted, unable to escape the mesmerizing grip of the spectral chef. Each stir, each chop, each sizzle was a testament to the chef's unfulfilled passion, a passion so strong it had transcended death itself. It was a chilling reminder that some bonds, some obsessions, can even outlast mortality. But the kitchen, once a comforting sanctuary of warmth and nourishment, had transformed. It was now a stage for the ghostly gastronomer's chilling performance, a performance that our protagonist would remember for the rest of their days, a performance that would forever redefine their understanding of the phrase cooking up a storm. The kitchen was no longer a sanctuary, it was a stage for the ghostly gastronomer's chilling performance. To escape this culinary nightmare, our protagonist had to taste the horrifying concoction. The stew sat there, a bubbling cauldron of fear, its aroma wafting through the room like a spectre. This was not a simple dish, but the manifestation of a terrifying ordeal. Our protagonist stood there, frozen in trepidation. It was a moment where time seemed to stand still, where every tick of the clock echoed ominously. The spoon felt heavy in their hand, a weight that was more than just physical. It was the weight of fear, of uncertainty, of a journey into the unknown. They took a deep breath, the kind you take when you're about to jump off a cliff into a sea of unknown depths. Every instinct screamed to run, to leave this haunted kitchen behind, but they knew they couldn't. They had to face their fear, to taste this dreadful brew. With a trembling hand, they scooped up a spoonful of the stew. The room hummed with an eerie silence as they brought it to their lips. It was a moment of pure terror, of confronting the monster under the bed, of looking the ghost in the eye. Then, as the first drop of stew touched their tongue, everything changed. The chilling wind that had been sweeping through the kitchen suddenly stopped. The flickering lights steadied. The haunting echoes that had been bouncing off the walls silenced. The kitchen, once a stage for this spectral drama, returned to its normal state. The ghostly figure that had been their tormentor vanished, as though swallowed by the ether. As they swallowed the stew, they realized that it wasn't the taste of the food that was horrifying, but the taste of fear itself. It was bitter, it was unsettling, but it was a taste they had to endure to break free from this ghastly ordeal. The taste of fear was bitter, but it was the only way to end the nightmare. The kitchen was back to its cozy self, but the taste of fear lingered. As our protagonist stood in the heart of their home, the once familiar surroundings bore an eerie resemblance to a stage set after the actors had taken their final bow. The aftermath of the sinister supper was no more. The dishes were washed, the counters wiped clean. The quaint kitchen, with its cherry wood cabinets and vintage wallpaper, was a picture of tranquility. But the echo of the ghostly gastronomer's chilling recipe still resonated, sending shivers down the spine. The act of cleaning, usually therapeutic, could not wash away the lingering dread. Every clink of the cutlery, every splash of the dishwater seemed amplified, like a haunting symphony playing out in the confines of the room. The protagonist tried to shake off the fear, tried to regain the comforting rhythm of their culinary sanctuary, but the memory of the terrifying tasting was too fresh, too raw. Each time they would step into the kitchen, the phantom feeling of being watched would creep up on them. The smell of garlic and herbs, once a source of comfort, now carried with it a haunting aftertaste. The once loved space was now a constant game of shadows and whispers. The protagonist found themselves glancing over their shoulder more often, their heart pounding at the slightest creak or crackle. And then there was that taste, the taste of the haunting stew. It seemed to have seeped into their taste buds, a grim reminder of a night they wished to forget. It was a taste that was not of this world, a taste that lingered long after the meal was over, an aftertaste that was a chilling blend of fear and the unknown. As days turned into nights and weeks into months, the protagonist found themselves trapped in a cycle of dread and unease. The once warm and comforting kitchen had now morphed into a stage for the macabre, a place where the line between the living and the dead blurred. The kitchen, once a haven of comfort food and warmth, had now become a constant reminder of the terrifying tasting.